Fireside episode 2. With me, I've got, as always, Big Daver. How are you, dude?
Not bad, Vinno, yourself?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Episode 2. We've had, a pretty good reaction in the last week, haven't we, man? After that first drop and the introduction video.
Yeah, we're doing all right. Got a bit of interaction. 12 subs, the dirty dozen, the first 12.
Look out.
Yeah, we won't forget you.
What we want some feedback on is how many people have been hammered by the song as soon as they jump onto our channel. It was a bit of a joke that we had. So yeah, we'll be interested to hear back. Tell us what you think.
It was a bit of fun.
About the episodes. Yeah, we're looking forward to that feedback and that bit of interaction. We will eventually have some people on as guests to talk about when we get into some subjects that we're certainly not as up to speed on as what we'd like to be. And I suppose we would have liked to have a guest on for tonight's episode. But this was a very short notice one that we decided to go after, and it was because it's a recent topic. And we want to make it very clear tonight that we aren't experts all the way through on this topic. We have had to do a fair bit of research to get this episode the way we sort of want it. So we are going to get things wrong, and we do want you to challenge us and challenge our opinions about this episode, because it's a touchy subject. Tonight we are going to be talking about Afghanistan and the current issues that are happening at the moment as we speak. It's all unfolding right now with the Taliban taking back the country. It's going to be a very touchy subject for a lot of people, especially for a lot of our returned servicemen have been over there. We're not going to delve too much into, or if at all, into the military tactics side. I know I'm not a military tactician. I haven't served over there. I'm not going to delve into those sorts of things, but we are going to go through the events that have led up to the way we are and our thoughts on the current process. And Dave, you've done a lot more research into the backstory of Afghanistan than what I have. So,
well, just to bolster a bit about what you said there. Look, we don't have the answers. We're certainly we're taking on a subject now that's got quite a lot of people and a lot of opinions and a lot of counterpoints, and we're going to try and navigate that and try and look at this from as many perspectives as possible. Like as Vinno said, we're not experts. Hopefully, look, this is an ever-changing, by the day, subject. So no doubt we'll be hitting on this again. We'll be talking about what happens. I think over the coming months things are going to change. But don't be mad at us. But if you are mad at us, and if we get anything wrong, smack it down there in the comments. Let us know. We'll talk. We'll interact with you. We'll be coming back. If we're wrong, we'll own it. And but I think if we're going to talk about Afghanistan, we should have a little think about the history of Afghanistan and how it came to be the way it is today. Just as if you're going to talk about Australia and anything happened in Australia, you'd want to know about the Anzacs, you'd want to know about Indigenous Australians, you want to learn as much as you can about the culture and everything that happened as much as possible from then and now. So we put together a couple of things, and I guess if you're to look at Afghanistan and notice it in its history, the country or the land and regions that are now known as Afghanistan, they have a rough history of domination by foreign conquerors, as well as civil tensions among internal war and factions. And it has been said of Afghanistan that it is the graveyard of empires. I mean, these lands were once conquered by the likes of Alexander the Great, Genghis Khan, among other ancient empires, and again, warring factions. Yeah, and due to its geographical location, it's part of the gateway between Asia and Europe.
Right in the middle of everything,
the Silk Road.
Isn't it? It's
It's a trade route. Yeah.
of that area, isn't it? It's the trade and I suppose military interest as well, isn't it? It's the heart of a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, everyone's trying to have influence in this area because of just you have to remember this is before planes and those ways of traveling and actual, proper infrastructure in this part of the world, and different minerals. I think you had a little bit of look into the trade there, didn't you?
Yeah, well, the Silk Road,
Road.
and how important that was, and that trade route throughout history. Before sea travel or shipping was a big thing. It was the Silk Road. Afghanistan has been a big part of that.
Yeah.
The economy and the spice trade and everything, all the way through there since the Roman Empire. It's been a significant part of that route. So it's like you said, that a lot of empires have tried to conquer it. It's interesting what you say about it being the graveyard of empires, because it's not just the ancient ones, is it? That have.
No, you're absolutely right. It's not. I mentioned whistled off a couple of the famous ones then, because of its ancient geographic location. But then you go to the 19th century, right? And Britain annexes Afghanistan around the 19th century, and because they were really afraid Russia was going to do the same thing, basically, and use it as a strategic launch to take over India, which of course was under occupation of Britain too. So there's a lot of strategic geographical interests at play, and you can see it happening on a map. You can see the encroachment, and Britain was there, and they actually had 3 significant wars with the Afghan people, and they're actually called the British-Afghan Wars. And on the third one, they beat Britain, and they became an independent nation, 1921. And now you have to remember as well, this is just after the First World War. Britain depleted, and it was a good time to rise up. I mean, just 1922 is when Ireland was able to capitalise on the 1916 rebellion before that. So it was a good time for these nations to attack the empire while they weren't strong.
And I suppose that's a good point there. One of the common misconceptions, to a degree, is that Afghanistan has been at war for just been at war with each other for so long, but it hasn't been the case. They've been at war with outside influences prior to their internal conflicts, and there has been a massive amount of influence, and they've never really been given the chance to have the time to establish their own nation solidly, have they? It's always been influenced and changed, hasn't it?
No, you're absolutely right. And even the external factors, even the countries that would blatantly annex them or move in and invade throughout their history, it's actually, even when it's a civil war, there's generally moneyed interest and geographical defense interest in all of its neighbors, So and even those across the oceans. But even look, they were an independent country, but it was on 1921, but not long after that, in 1926, Amir Amanullah Khan declared Afghanistan a monarchy, but claimed himself king. So he generally, like as all kings do, as authoritarians, and generally they'll try to own the dialogue and the culture within the kingdom they lord over. Launches quite a lot of modernization plans and attempts to limit the power of the Loya Jirga, which is a national council, or like a grand council of it's built up of representatives from the various ethnic and religious tribal communities of Afghanistan. So he becomes king. Didn't last long either.
Well, didn't even last 100 years, did it? I mean, it's only as far as 1973.
This guy, this one was only king until 1928.
Yeah.
And because critics of his policy, the National Council, took up arms, and then by 1929 he was forced to abdicate the throne and flee the country. So King Amir Khan, he's just a few days later is gone, and you have the new king, Zahir Shah. He becomes king of Afghanistan, and he seems to bring an air of stability. He's the one just after, I think you're alluding to now, is 40 years reign, and within a year of that, so this is 1933. So within a year of that, the United States had formally recognized Afghanistan as a nation. So
not even until 1938 that they're actually recognized. So that's
34. So 1933, Shah becomes king of Afghanistan, brings an air of stability for 40 years. And then just a year after that, the United States recognizes, because obviously they're happy. They're trying to poke their nose in there. It's, and as well, the Second World War is about to kick the fuck off. So everyone's going around, they're getting strategic advantages. They're trying to, they're trying to make allies where they can. And as we were talking about, the geographical location of Afghanistan, something you want to hold.
So, and I suppose during that World War II era, it's quite well known that, Japan and China were at war, and there's that strategic location of Afghanistan as a defensive location for that, as well as hostilities hadn't kicked off too much with Russia at that stage with the US, but they were still a threat, I suppose. So there was that forethought that, Afghanistan as a location for, control or having quite a big say in that area, was certainly beneficial. But I suppose that, that 40 years reign, it didn't end really until the 70s, did it?
1973.
1973, when the monarchy is abolished, wasn't it? It's so Muhammad Khan takes power with a non-violent coup.
Well, he'd been building himself up, hadn't he, during that 40 years. From around 1953, he became a pro-Soviet style general and then prime minister. So, and he would look to, as a prime minister, the Soviet Union for more aid and help and just economic and military assistance. And he did this for years. Even Khrushchev in '56 agreed to help Afghanistan, and the two nations became like a lot closer allies. And that's during that 40 years. That's during that 40 years of King Zahir Shah. And during all this, he's building up reforms that are allowing women more public presence and to attend university and even enter the workforce. But as we know, the Soviet influence, then it's building up, isn't it? And as you said, 1973, he overthrew the king, Zahir Shah.
And that's right. And by that stage, Russia's heavily involved in it, aren't they? And that didn't finish. It was, 1978, 28th of April, 1978, People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan overthrew Muhammad Dawood, who was assassinated with his family. So,
killed the party,
it goes.
The Taraki, then, isn't it? Found a member of the Afghanistan Communist Party, takes control. But he's actually, even though he's communist, he's trying to move the country more toward Islamic influence and away from the Soviets. So that's why actually he only lasts 1 year. He only lasts 1 year in there, and then USSR invades. So he only lasts from 1978, and USSR invades in 1979, and that's when he's killed. President Taraki's killed. Power struggle. USSR invades Afghanistan, December 24th, to bolster that regime, the communist regime. Yeah, and that's 9 years of course, Russia fighting the Mujahideen, which is the precursor to all this, I guess, the start of the American, not just the American, but is the tribal groups together, and the extremists were given a lot of money and a lot of influence from people who did not like Russia, and that's where the Mujahideen was born out of a lot of hands. I don't want to just say they're an American or CIA influence, because obviously they end up changing to be more of an anti-American or an anti-occupation unit, and
But
And again, it's
a lot of people.
pretty,
A lot of people look solely to America, but there's been so many different countries that have been involved, and a lot of them are countries that border Afghanistan. So you've got lots of Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Iran,
China.
They've all been involved with militia groups and funding and training these guys. Now, I'll make it clear, we are certainly not Taliban sympathizers.
No way.
Taliban are, the worst of the worst.
Well, this isn't the Taliban yet. We haven't even got there yet. But like, just like you're right, we got to tell people from the back in case they're thinking we're sympathizing theocrats or religious extremists. Yeah, no way.
It's as you know, Dave, extremism is my biggest hate, and it's not just religious extremism. It's extremism in any form, and I that's what the forces that we're looking at today are extreme groups, but they have been developed and have grown from these oppressive wars and this influence all the way back from prior to the 70s. And that's the picture we're trying to paint here, is these groups didn't just pop up overnight. They didn't just pop up to hate America. It has been a progressive thing, and it's grown to be the fighting force that it is, and a substantial one. I know a lot of people might think they're sitting on their couches, and I haven't, as I said, I haven't been able to Afghanistan to fight these people, but these aren't people that have just walked out of the cave and picked up a gun overnight. They've had generation and generation of oppression, and they're quite formidable fighters. That's got something that's got to be acknowledged, because it's another misconception through the news, through the media, I suppose, the way they're portrayed, or pop culture, is that they are just, random people that are picking up a gun and going and shooting people, which is certainly not the case.
Well, no, they're not even your. It's hard because the whole direction of Afghanistan changes behind that. So even in Ireland, people tended to delve, because the Catholicism was so mashed up into the nationalist movement and the Republican movement before, when they were still under occupation. They come together, and people are just most people are just want to fucking live. You know what I mean? Look, everywhere in the world, they just want to live. But there's all these people competing for the for the leadership roles within their country. And if we're going to talk about the Taliban and Al Qaeda and the Mujahideen, we have to start that they are the people defending their own land. So however you defend, like, that's the hardest thing. Even with Vietnam or any other country in the world, it's hard to fight people on their own land. They know the ins and outs. They know what they have to do, and they'll die for it. Like we would die for Australia, you know what I mean? Or Australians have died for their nation, for their family. If people were coming down the streets and abseiling down, they'd go to their own to say, what the fuck's happening here? But the moneyed interest and proxy wars within the region have been taking the influence in Afghanistan and smashing. I mean, even in that, when USSR invaded Afghanistan in 1979, and the Mujahideen became like they were backed by America, and Rambo, that was the First Blood Part 3. The start of the end of it, it's like, we dedicate this to the brave Mujahideen. Rambo's with the fucking Taliban in that. Watch not Rocky 3, fucking what a fantastic movie. But watch Rambo 3, is all about Rambo and the Mujahideen. Watch it. I swear to God. He's like these people are just fighting for their homeland. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like literally, because they were wrong, because that was the propaganda at the time. Yeah. And you have to watch it again.
I will, man.
And Reagan even he dedicated
video with your Stallone impression, man, because I think
yeah, I think these guys are all right.
Yeah, give us an Adrian. I did it.
Yeah, nah, we'll get there. We will do a fucking episode on the Rocky franchise, or even Sly. That'll be wicked. But here, not to drift off too much.
Yeah.
But but they did have, and even Reagan, he dedicated one of the fucking shuttle, the Apollos or whatever it was, fucking launching into the space. He dedicated one to the brave people of Afghanistan because they wanted to. Now, look, again, you've got Russia on one side who's fucking dying there and they're fucking economically struggling. And a lot of people think that this last war with Russia was the fucking tipping point, is believed to be contributed to the Soviet Union collapse and the end of the Cold War, because there's just fucking not the Taliban, Afghanistani people will, and the Mujahideen in this case, which formed just before this. So now that this is the best fucking marketing tool than ever, is to have this occupying force and space gear fucking. And
now,
but however,
this is still
between 6 and 11.
Yeah, this is
this is fucking 9 years. This is millions of refugees. This is millions of people dead. I think it's 3 million Afghans dead, and 6 to 11% of the population gone. If you think about what, that's no 9/11. That's huge, and they've had 3 really big refugee crises in the country. They have the Afghan Civil War. They've the fucking USSR or the Soviet Union Afghan War. They have the War of 2001, which we're going to talk about, 2021. And refuge, and now again they're going to have the Civil War, which I believe we'll get into. It's probably going to happen, and maybe not a civil war, but if not a civil war, you're definitely going to have a lot of refugees, or at least a lot of people trying to become refugees who don't want to live under the Taliban, and lots of other regions are fighting at the moment. After they actually, then after the, how long before did they actually defeat Russia, or I guess did Russia pull out, or what happened?
I haven't delved too much into. I haven't looked too much into the Russian side of things. I think we should go quite.
I've got a little bit here. Let me have a look here then.
As far as the Civil War, it was 1989 that the Mujahideen are backed by Pakistan to establish their own
US. Yeah.
This fails in 3 months.
Well, just before that year, I'll let you take over 89 in a minute, but just 88, because that's important. That's when Osama bin Laden and 15 other Islamists formed a group called Al Qaeda, or the base, which is what it means, and that's they continue their jihad or holy war against the Soviets, who they say oppose their goal of a pure national government governed by Islam. Which they believe the Soviets' falter in war Afghanistan was directly attributable to their fighting, and they claimed victory in the first battle, but also began to shift their focus towards America just before they're about to get that independence, and saying the remaining superpower is the main obstacle in establishment of the state based of Islam. But then we know, like you were saying, between, was it 1989 or whatever, it was the US, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and the Soviet Union, they signed a peace accords in Geneva.
Yeah. And then, well, it's not long after that, 1992, Afghanistan falls into civil war.
Yeah.
And this is
lots of refugees again.
Yeah, lots of refugees, and a period of
death
where the tribal conflicts come in a lot. And this is where a lot of external influence comes in. This is where you've got the Saudi Arabia, Iran, backing them quite substantially. And trying to, develop their dominance, I suppose, through these different factions. And
you think of people out there, during this whole time, there's no education happening. There's no, a country can't function properly under this. No one can get a good decade or two where they can just fucking settle. And it's all like you said, it's all getting tossed up again.
And it's like you said before, in this period of the Civil War, you've got the refugees, and it's we need to know that's where the Taliban have been formed from. So it was in 1994 that the Taliban formed out of a religious school for Afghan refugees in Pakistan, and during that period as well, to the Afghan people, the Taliban was seen as heroes, and that's probably an issue that they have a lot at the
seen by us too. Don't forget it. We bolstered this faction and these people to this well, I guess just before that, we've driven them to this side of politics where they feel this is our side.
Yeah. Well, trying to influence them externally, and that was trying to create that dominance, wasn't it? And it's backfired massively, because these people have got their own agenda, they've got their own beliefs, and that's where that external influence, always has backfired on oppressive people that have tried to use other nations as a pawn to get what they want. And the Taliban were always an extremist Islamic group. They always had that extreme Sharia law imposement. From 1996, when they took Kabul and established the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, that's when they first implement the same laws that they are currently implementing over there right now, that we are seeing, where people are really up in arms about, and what the Afghani people are extremely concerned about at the moment. It's going back to that extreme Islamic, oppressive law.
There was extreme circumstances. I mean, during that civil war, the Afghan people are fed up and they just want an end to something. And in just a year after, you were saying, in 94, they were starting these education schools for refugees. In 95, they formed the militias, and the Taliban rose to power on the promises of peace. So people are like, fucking right, and they've got years of drought, famine, war during a civil war, and they approve of generally the rural areas, and most regions do agree with the Taliban for upholding traditional Islamic values. And the Taliban, they started to outlaw the cultivation of poppies, which obviously we can get into the opium trade later, and they cracked down on crime, obviously with Sharia law. You're talking about amputating, public beatings, amputating legs, arms for stealing.
I'll just stop you with the significance of the poppy trade and heroin.
Yeah.
Because with the Silk Road no longer being necessary to the degree that you've got shipment, I suppose this is where the poppy trade and the heroin trade really starts to become a necessity, doesn't it, for these?
Well, it's their main export, isn't it? I mean, and let me I think more than 80% of the world's heroin is directly linked to Afghanistan poppy. So there are a lot of different countries that's a commodity, and it's to get it from there wouldn't be in breach of your own country's law. Like, to the US soldiers guarded poppy fields,
That's quite well documented. There's been
but the Taliban went for it originally. I think ultimately they realized, okay, look, we know that the Taliban aren't fucking like all authoritarians. In the end, they'll break their rules for monetary gain. They'll break their rules for power, and they're hypocrites. They're hypocrites in how they pick and choose to celebrate their faith, and the violent way they use to I guess enforce it on people. I mean, when they came to be, this is the crackdown on crime, the education and employment of women then starts to go out the window. Women are required to be fully veiled, not allowed outside alone. Islamic law is enforced via public execution and amputations. The US then refuses to recognize the authority of the Taliban. So again, Al-Qaeda very connected with the Taliban, and they, in 98, they bombed 2 American embassies in Africa, and Clinton he orders cruise missile attacks against Bin Laden's training camps in Afghanistan. And he attacks Mr. Saudi, because Bin Laden, maybe we should give a bit of quick boy on him. He's a Saudi, he's related to the royal family, and he's well connected, and he was part of the Mujahideen and the formation of Al-Qaeda.
Al-Qaeda were never they were a state within the Taliban state, weren't they? They supplied fighters during the Civil War against the United Front and whatnot, but they were never actually the dominant power, were they? They were sort of always in the background.
Well, they're off. they're not. Let's run a state where Al Qaeda. They're a militant guerrilla outfit. You know what I mean? That went out and actually did conduct acts of terror. And again, look, we can talk about what people want to believe in, all right? But it's how you're going to convince people to believe your side, and how you're going to convince people that this ideology supports a moral axiom somewhere. And there are some people in the world that, and maybe in that region, that's whenever they've gotten not peace, but whenever they've gotten home rule, it's through this violence and through this. So they're a war-torn, battle-hardened mountain folk. You know what I mean? Like, they're not like us. I don't want to say it like that, but we're very privileged in our upbringing, and we didn't grow up hearing shells and mortars clashing on walls around us. So it's very hard to put yourself in the mind of who you would, like, if your parents were killed in front of you, what would you grow up to be? You'd be someone who would want to avenge that, and maybe the only people that are going to take you in and that are making any inroads and are funded by America are fucking this lot. And then after they have those victories against the Russians, because that's how they see them as the people that freed them, and they're part of the Mujahideen, and Al Qaeda was still hitting America, who they felt were still hanging around in the region.
And I suppose, like you touched on, when we didn't have that, we weren't surrounded by war growing up. We were very, very lucky. We also didn't have that extremist belief pushing us into those positions as well, and being brought up in that extremist ideology is important. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to start talking about 9/11 and just how we got involved within Australia. How we got involved in that, and the events since 2001, September 11, 2001, which was, as everyone knows, quite a significant event. And I suppose for a lot of people, that's when Al Qaeda and the Taliban first came into our minds. So, okay, with us, it's a short break, and we'll come back and dive straight into that.
Hello there, Firesiders and Yarnies. How are you? Pure Blonde is a lager, but it has 80% less carbohydrates. Get it into his lads. Pure Blonde.
Welcome back, everyone, from the quick break. I hope you enjoy the song. I wrote that myself, so yeah, I'm proud of it. I hope you guys get hammered with it and eventually it gets in your heads. But before the break,
our generation's Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah, the song of a generation as well. Before the break, we were talking about the rise of the Taliban and the history about Afghanistan prior, but now we're going to start getting into the more recent history and the history that our generation definitely remembers, and that's September 11th and how we got drawn into Afghanistan. Now, I remember, the day that those planes hit the trade center. I remember exactly where I was and what I was doing. I suppose a lot of people wouldn't. That I think we were only in year 8 at the time. Year 7 or year 8. And I sort of had no idea at that time about Afghanistan or where Afghanistan was. And I suppose that was the case for a lot of people. And September 11 changed that in a big way. And for the next 20 years, as we know, we've been involved in Afghanistan. So, Dave, how did we get there? What led us to September 11?
Apart from part 1, which I hope everyone's watched, about a year before 9/11, 2000, Bin Laden is now considered an international terrorist. Now, again, like Vinno was saying, it's not in the popular lexicon yet, Al Qaeda. And this is more people are paying attention to foreign policy and geographical issues around the world and the intelligence agencies. But he's believed to be hiding in Afghanistan, where he's cultivated thousands of followers in the terrorist training camps. The United States, after those embassy bombings, is demanding Bin Laden be extradited and stand trial for the embassy bombings. The Taliban declined to extradite him. That's when the start of the kind of them Taliban protecting Al Qaeda from America started to happen. And the United Nations punished Afghanistan with sanctions. They restricted trade and economic development. And ultimately, that's what led Al Qaeda to then take part of 9/11, September 11, 2001. Hijackers commandeered 4 commercial airplanes, crashed them into the World Trade Centers, New York, and the Pentagon, and the outside of Washington D.C. and Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, thousands killed. I think up to 3,000 people died. And then days later,
in one event, substantial amount of people, man. I suppose that's a good thing about what we're doing with this podcast. That I enjoy is this research, because all I know is that the planes at the Pentagon got cars cruising past my house. All that.
I heard that.
I might need to soundproof my whole house.
The lads cracking seconds out in front of fucking Vinno's house.
The old Commodores with the
I don't knock the Commodores. But yeah, look, where were you? 9/11.
Yeah, so that I wasn't aware of the lead up to it, and it wasn't sort of until
me neither.
That I've looked into it. So
they hate us because they hate us. That's kind of what we, oh my God, they're attacking us. And we say us because generally, like we see, Australia pulls out of Afghanistan because America's pulled out of Afghanistan. Australia goes into Afghanistan because America's there. So we are linked with America being the world power. So generally,
we have been since World War II.
That's right. We ally with them. So if you hit America, we have to prepare, and we've got to get Aussie soldiers have to be like, all right, dust off the slouch hat. And if we could talk about that for a second, I'd love if we. Cool. I guess that ties us into the monarchy a bit. But if we were to become a neutral country, I guess we wouldn't have to get involved in these things, or at least if we did, we could do it on as a United Nations peacekeeper role instead of a combatant in a war. I feel like getting in there and fighting all these other wars and throwing our soldiers at, and you can see the devastation it has on suicide rates of returned servicemen and getting in these wars, and we're putting them in these positions that are unimaginable to the majority of us out there.
You've touched on it there, and that's probably the most tragic thing about this war, as far as us being involved in it, is how our returned servicemen feel about this. And if you are a returned serviceman and you're watching this, please give us some feedback, because I work with a couple or a few returned servicemen. My brother is a returned serviceman from Afghanistan and Iraq, and I would really like to know how or what their thoughts are at the moment with that. Do they feel that it was a waste of time? You get the
I heard a bit of that
all the time, talking about it and trying to portray the feeling of those soldiers. But I would really like to hear from those returned servicemen as to whether they felt that the time we were there, they did everything that they could, and this was inevitable. And we'll go into that more a bit later on, or whether they are.
Will we hear more on that? Yeah.
All
right, because obviously I've got heaps to say on the soldiers' perspective and the army's perspective. I mean, we can talk about the decisions to go into these wars and military operations and the civilian representatives are the chiefs, are the people who decide what the army do. The army and soldiers are just the people who have decided and put up their hand and say, look, we will fight for this country. Where they send us, we will do it. they are trained to follow orders. You know what I mean? So
Mm.
we're not. I want to talk more about that perspective a bit later, because I believe that's very different than because we're talking a lot about leaders and heads of states now and people that have geopolitical. There's nuance there that they're trying to control things, and they're trying to for the interest of their own country. And of course, you've got so many interests, but I don't think soldiers are that. We can say, oh, those soldiers did this.
Yeah.
We can separate them, and I hope we'll talk about it a little bit more later. But
Absolutely, man.
then,
Absolutely.
where were we when 9/11?
September 11. So September 11 happens, and as a result, the America says to the Taliban, give up Al Qaeda, which they don't do yet again.
Again,
as a result, a coalition of Western nations led by the USA, so us, Britain, to name a couple, we began working with the commanders of the United Front against the Taliban. Now, we didn't touch on this too much, but the United Front was an alliance made or developed in the northern part of Afghanistan when the Taliban first came to power with their extremist beliefs, and they fought from 1996 right up until America got involved. The Western nations got involved in 2001, and that's who I suppose the Western nations backed, was the United Front.
well, that was just who that. Whenever you invade, you have to say, okay, well, we're assisting this side. Who are the, who are the? How would we regard them? They're the people that are decent. Like, we're going to support the decent Afghans, and we're going to take out the Taliban.
Yeah,
I mean,
would say the ones
the Taliban would not give up on
interest.
harboring terror. They wouldn't give up harboring a terrorist. Now, this is what we're talking about, everything out there. We're talking about this from the viewpoint of the USA and NATO, right? They wouldn't give up Bin Laden. You're not allowed to harbor terrorists under the United Nations law. This wasn't an illegal war. Like a coalition of 40 countries ended up going in. Look, American warplanes in October, they're bombing Taliban targets and bases reportedly belonging to the Al Qaeda network too. The Taliban proclaimed they're ready for the jihad, so now the Taliban is ready. They're at war, and by December 7th, Taliban fighters they abandoned their final stronghold in Kandahar, and the malicious group, their hold on Afghanistan just continues to disintegrate. And 2 days later, Taliban leaders surrender the group's final Afghan territory, a province in Zabul. The move leads the Pakistan-based Afghan Islamic press to declare that the rule of the Taliban in Afghanistan has totally ended. That was December 8th or December 7th. Now, having won
all
battle,
all within a year, finished, isn't it?
Within months, mate. October is when they did the airstrikes, and then by December 22nd, the UN have determined an interim government. Hamid Karzai is elected to the transitional Islamic State of Afghanistan, December 22nd, just in time for Christmas.
Convenient.
It's not a fucking laughing matter, but
so
that's what we do, isn't it? Working class people in times of horribleness, we go to comedy, don't we?
Well, you can't laugh about it, you cry sometimes. It's the old saying.
Yeah.
So I suppose saying that, it's not until 2011 that Bin Laden was captured, is it?
Yeah. Well, I guess, look, before we go to 2011, I think it's important to recognise that Hamid Karzai was elected by, obviously, UN determined the government, so that's not going to fly. So by 2004, he was actually democratically elected. More than 10.5 million Afghans registered to vote, and 18 presidential candidates, and out of 18, he got 55% of the vote. So, and he's now declared president of the new president of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. So what we did up to 2005, the nation holds its first parliamentary elections for the first time in 30 years as well. So, and a peaceful vote leads to the parliament's first meeting. So everything's going good. And then, as you would say, in 2011.
Yeah, so I'll bring you back to 2005 just quickly because I saw a really interesting photo today, and it was taken in 2003, and it was of three girls in Kabul, dressed, I suppose you would call it, Western attire. And the interesting thing about that for me was that still during that period, were, had the misconception that Afghanistan was still a very strong Islamic Sharia law type nation. And that photo with those girls, and the description was that they were on their way to class. So, and that was quite a significant thing. And I didn't realise that things had progressed that quickly. And once again, that's where this, talking about this sort of stuff has benefited me. And hopefully it benefits our viewers as well. But yeah, jumping forward now to 2011, the capture of Bin Laden and that famous conversation, or famous statement from Barack Obama in regards to Bin Laden being captured.
So yeah, the US forces, they overtake a compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. They kill Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden on May 2nd, local time. The Rock actually knew, there's a funny little story, The Rock knew about it before. So, and there was a big build-up. I know you ever talk to my dad, who's an Australian soldier. I predicted this because there was a big wait. Obama has to say something. He was walking up and I was like, I bet you they got Bin Laden, because I couldn't think of anything else that they would stop the news for. And it was that. And it was that then was a good opportunity to not claim victory, but to say our mission is complete, or claim victory, however you want to. Like, that was the argument for staying there. I mean, Bush had an exit plan, was to get Bin Laden, get out there. Obama actually had, after Bin Laden, he ends up having an exit plan and he doesn't come up with it. We'll get to that, I guess. But they kill Bin Laden. What a weird fucking way to take a dude out. It was pretty gangster, actually. We take him out, we fucking chuck him in the ocean. Who does that? Like, we caught him, we got him in Pakistan, and we killed him, and then we threw him in the ocean. But we gave him an Islamic burial. Remember that?
And that's
they specified that.
I've changed over the headset. I don't know if you could hear it, dude, but my young
I can hear you.
just through that door.
He's all right.
He's just.
Look here. This is where Fireside yarns here. We're dads. There's kids here. I'm gonna wake my fucking little one up. Like,
oh man,
this is a family-friendly fucking show. Right?
To a degree.
That's all right, brother.
To a degree, yeah.
That's all right, brother.
But I suppose that's been, and we'll get on to, we'll do an episode later on about conspiracy theories. But
was one,
wasn't it, about his body being dumped in the ocean?
Well, there's so many. Yeah, like even up to now, we skipped by 9/11. That was 10 years ago. Like, we realised we're skimming boys stuff, and there's a lot of, we're just trying to get to the withdrawal. So if you want to hear it down in them fucking comments, let us know. If there's a part of this you want us to talk about more and delve deep into, you want to talk about conspiracy theories, we'll have a look at them and take it. We'll be honest. And
I love a good conspiracy theory, man.
Yeah, I'm from that era. I love that shit. I don't believe in it, any of the stuff anymore, but I don't believe in Lord of the Rings. But I'm just excited for the new show. Maybe you Firesiders out there, which is we're throwing around what we were going to call you. Nobody doesn't right now, but the Firesiders are Arnold Schwarzeneggers or Yarnies. I'm not sure what we're going to call you. But the Yarny Army. But look, yeah, you want us to focus more on something, let us know. Right now, we haven't even got to the withdrawal yet. That's what we're going to talk about, that, because that's the big thing right now. But right now, we're Osama bin Laden's dead. A couple of years later, there's a drawback in NATO. Like, there is a drawback. 2013, Afghan army takes over all military security operations from the NATO forces, and then the next year, NATO officially ends its combat mission in Afghanistan, and the US-led NATO troops remain to train and advise Afghan forces, the ANA. So,
and I suppose that brings us into, poses the question of, And it's one that's been asked over the years. It hasn't just been raised since this incident. How long did we need to be in Afghanistan for after Bin Laden had been killed? Even prior to that, once the Taliban had been finished off, and I know there was, the ISIS took a lot of focus for a long time. But
What was
after the
that?
Taliban was
Yeah.
run off, did Western forces need to be there as strongly as what they did? Could they be more of an advisory sort of thing, or it's
There's a mission creep issue. I think like there was obvious goals they wanted to get there, and we'll talk when we talk about the withdrawal about the President Biden's administration talking about the mission and what we were supposed to accomplish. But generally, what they wanted to do was they wanted to get the people who attacked them on 9/11. So that's Al Qaeda. Taliban were protecting them, but they got them. And they wanted to diminish and stop any kind of terror attack coming out of Afghanistan, and they did that too. In 20 years, there have been terror attacks, but not.
Yeah.
They stopped that, and they and again, the Taliban and Al Qaeda are different. I know they can be interchangeable in this conflict a little bit and back and forward, and we kind of see them as allies. But and I guess we'll come back more into the Taliban during the withdrawal when they talk about how that they're not going to harbor terrorists. But yeah, ultimately, NATO's 2004, 2014, they and NATO and the US, they've given the Afghan forces full control now, and they're more advising and training the procedures. And in 2014, Hamid Karzai, his term limits now. You got presidents. So Ashraf Ghani is elected president 2014, and why I think that's interesting is because during this occupation, this is the first peaceful transition of power. So that's the first time a president has given up. So before, people might have thought Karzai and his political party might have been dictators or the puppet state, but ultimately a democratic election. Now again, you can go into conspiracy theories and was it did they really win? But then you've got two consecutive elections given by Ashraf Ghani.
Yeah, because prior to that, as we touched on before, it's either been through coups or assassinations and stuff, hasn't it?
Monarchies declaring themselves kings and presidents rising up and nations invading. Yeah.
That's quite a substantial event to have that, that election there for the Afghani people.
And he's re-elected again, 2019.
Yeah.
So at least he's doing his second term. Now, I think we can go into. We've kind of had the Bush era and then Obama, and all these have had peace deals with the Taliban, and they've had negotiations, and there's been diplomatic back channels where they've had to talk to tribal leaders and geopolitical interests within the regions. And
there has been one though that has had a significant.
2020, is it?
Betrayal of or promised and then reneged on it. And I mean, Trump. Now,
well, everyone, it's unfair. Look, because we don't want to be seen. Because I'm not a big Trump guy, but I want to be seen as fair right now. Because, as we said earlier, Bush had an exit strategy, and
Barack Obama has an exit strategy.
Barack Obama is the same as well. It's like,
they were all selling points for elections, weren't they? It's talking points, saying promising.
Until we get to, we'll get to Joey B when we get there. Yeah. But there's a lot of promises, and even Trump in 2016.
Yeah, and it's a selling point, because during that time, people are calling for the withdrawal of the troops, and that's nothing new. You see your young men and women
I don't know,
overseas for a long period of time and involved in a conflict which hasn't had as much traction. So it went quiet for a long time. You'd hear news here and there.
You get numb to it. When,
You
when
do.
we're not experiencing it, so we get known to. There's a lot of people that got used to it. There's a lot of adults that were born after the war started and became adults before the war ended. You know what I mean? They're in university and all they've known is like, yeah, we're at war with fucking Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And everyone's promised we're going to leave. And like the majority of people, I think it's upwards of 70% of people, they just don't want to be part of this. They don't want to. And you've seen it with Vietnam as well. People are just over, you know, and that was back when people were conscripted, before mask mandates, when people were actually told to do some bad shit by the government. Not bad shit, but they were actually controlling it. And conscription when the state truly called upon people to give their sovereignty to them. But the Trump peace deal with the Taliban, that's after years of negotiations as well. And the Taliban and the Trump administration, they actually signed a peace deal in 2020. And I think it was either that year or before, he got a lot of flack for bringing them to Camp David on the fucking anniversary of 9/11.
I remember that. So there was big talks at that time, wasn't there? It was.
Yeah, but again, it's like for peace, for stability, we have the only people we can make peace with is our enemies. We're friends with our friends. You know what I mean? The only people we have to make peace with are the people we have conflict with, and I'm all right with that. But you're seeing conservatives and even Trump now that they're acting like they would have done things any different. I mean, they were organising on May 1st, I think it was, or May 2nd. May 1st, they were going to actually hand the country over to the Taliban. Then again, I don't know if I trust them, because this is, again, we're into 2020 promises now. 2016 promises to get out of war, and he didn't. And there was rumours when he lost the election that he was just going to say everyone out of Afghanistan, everyone just pull back. But the leaders told him not to do. No, look, it was going to happen. Someone was going to leave, and they were passing the book down. There, Bush knew as soon as you leave,
that one to put up with the
optics.
You know, the withdrawal and the effects of that. And I suppose that now brings us to Biden.
Joey B. Look, here, you got to give it to him. You got to give it. Now, we can talk about the withdrawal in a minute, but the decision, he says, I'm going to leave Afghanistan. And of course, everyone's like, all right, here we go again. So you're going to leave Afghanistan. And he said, we're going to leave by September 11, 2021. And we're like, all right, sure we are. That's beautiful and symbolic.
Here we are.
A fucking month early. Now, we can talk about the withdrawal, but first I would like to say that Bush didn't do it. Obama didn't do it. Trump promised to do it. He didn't do it. He said, I'll do it if you elect me. Oh, no. And then Biden said, I'll do it. Under a year goes in, and he does it. And he's owned it. He said, the buck stops with me, which I think is a beautiful thing. He's not like Trump, where he's like, oh, it's not my fault, and these people did it, and it's not me. And even Obama,
I think
his excuses for not pulling out as well.
Something we need to touch on is you've given us a Stallone impression tonight, and
it's too play. There are too many great Trump impressions to do now.
But I think we're starting a trend here, mate. I think every episode, Dave is going to have to do an impression of somebody.
I have to be do a disgusting impression of somebody,
whether it's relevant.
But ultimately, but we'll go back to him again. That kind of, it's good to see for someone to own it now. He'll own it, but in my opinion, I'm someone who did believe that they should have got out a lot earlier, and this was always going to happen. However, when that happened, I think there's a couple of things that he could have done better. I think that, again, things are going to unfold, people, in the next couple of months, and we're going to find out stuff that happened. And was this the plan all along? But he didn't want to be like, okay, it's okay, the Taliban's, especially when they're retreating and trying to get people. He didn't want to act like as soon as we're gone. He has to kind of act a certain way.
There was 70% of the country already controlled. Was it 70% controlled by the Taliban even prior to this decision being made? So that's quite a significant amount of that country under control of the Taliban already.
Well, 2019.
One thing that Biden has said, which was I noted, was he backed, or he took on some of the left-wing critics, so to speak, when they said we need to be doing more, we need to send our troops back in. And he turned around and said, I'm not going to send American soldiers in to fight a war that the Afghani people aren't going to fight themselves. And that's...
I don't think that...
that because he... You know, that's being in that position and making the decision that he did to finally withdraw troops. And for that sort of criticism, to then turn around and back, you know, his decision, that's quite substantial, I believe.
Yeah.
And I think that goes as a credit to him. He's made that promise, and now he's backing himself with it. And not only that, I mean, if Australians and Americans have had to send forces back in to secure the airstrip and
the airport,
but
in Kabul.
Yeah, and that's, you know, we could go back and touch on how the Taliban is viewed by the Afghani people and how they are still respected, but you know,
we'll get to I think we'll get to our overall feelings on stuff.
Yeah,
and about different factions and how they're going to react to this withdrawal.
But would you agree
if
that would be political suicide if he was to send? Not only that, you know, you're sending your own people.
You're back to war again. You're back to war again.
War, exactly, and that's you know, you've just undone everything that has been promised and everything that's been talked about and agreements and stuff like that. However, saying that, Taliban have also, you know, thrown all that to the wind by doing what they have done.
Yeah, and like to touch on what you said earlier, in 2019, Donald Trump, I think in 1 year, it dropped more bombs than ever in Afghanistan, and the Taliban grew during this because, again, and we see this, these types of things breed hatred, and people will fall into the arms of despots and demagogues when they're afraid. And there's a myriad of reasons to get out, and they could have done mission accomplished back like we said in 2013-14 when they were handing it over, but ultimately the same thing was going to happen. The Afghans, the most powerful members of that region, were ultimately going to make the decisions about what happens in their country. Now, I do think they thought it would happen, whether by an election or whether by force. The Taliban was going to come in and they were going to take over. I think they thought there'd be a bit more. I think the estimates were that it was inevitable within a couple of months, but I don't think they expected it to happen so quickly. Now,
you can see that
when the Taliban was coming in peacefully.
Yeah, well, you can see that from the rush and the fear with everybody. You know, the immigration officers being overwhelmed, the airports being overwhelmed, people not being able to get visas in time. I don't think any of them anticipated that it would happen so quickly.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think they had thought that they had months to do this, and the Taliban, and like I'm saying, they didn't want to get wrapped up in a back and forth on the way out, and to create devastation, because especially, and I don't mean to say the Taliban came in peacefully, because of course not. They're coming in as authoritarians and they're enacting a medieval way of life, or so we think. You know, they're saying that they're coming in as reformists and things are going to be different. But I don't think it would have served Biden to attack them coming in. I think he was like, okay, I just have to go. We have to go. Now, the bungle or where it could have been better was how we protect our translators and aid workers and allies and our people that helped us with surveillance and our allies over there. But like you said earlier, as soon as we leave, it's going to happen, and we can only do one thing. We can trust the ANA.
Yeah,
we can the Afghan National Army. We can trust the Taliban.
Well, I think
we can go back and occupy them. You know, so
I think the general consensus was that the ANA would put up a bit more of a fight than what they have.
Maybe, yeah.
And But that comes down to, like I touched on a bit before, was the thoughts around the Taliban, and there is still that, whether it's justified or not, there's still that respect for them to a degree. So whether that has had an influence in it, I'm not sure.
They have some things on their side, don't they? Like they have, like they were there for the USSR. They got cool slogans like "You have watches, we have time." Like that. They're generally a guerrilla army in their own country, and they're not seen as having global ambitions. They're territorial, so stay in their region. You know, I think that does. I think that helps a little bit for people to see them as not the oppressor, but as the people.
And this is the other thing, man. Like 20 years in the grand scheme of things isn't a long time. It is in one regard, but it's not at the same time. Like within our lifetime, if we were in Afghanistan and we were able to survive through the civil war and those sorts of things, we would know both sides of the agenda. And I suppose being males, we might know, you know, Sharia law might benefit us better. So we want that, you know, and I don't know, I'm just speculating there, but you know, the history is still very raw for both sides, you know, of the political spectrum. So I wonder how much that has influenced the ANA not fighting back, and you know,
they're afraid, mate. They're like, and here's the thing: like Afghanistan as a nation, you know what I mean, is kind of cobbled together. They're really many tribes together, warring tribes historically, and the Taliban as well. We say a lot of stuff, and the Taliban do have the Taliban are bad. Everybody, they fucking have child marriages and all this. But even over in our allies, our Afghan warlord allies in Afghanistan, and who weren't with the Taliban, but who we had to work with. We had US and allied forces stood down and discharged for blowing the whistle on local warlords who are our allies having child sex slaves, and we were told to look the other way.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, like that was on our side too. So we'll have to remember we've these moral axioms of the West, and we see that we're very progressive now, and well, we can't imagine it, but over there, like it's a completely different culture, and I think where we have to be wary about saying, "Oh, the Taliban are bad," is because anyone's bad if they're like Catholic priests rape children. You know what I mean? Around the world, and in their time when they were a theocracy, the Roman Catholic Church were horrible. So the Taliban now, why it's hard is because you've had 20 years of women being able to take part in government, to be educated, you know, become more visible members of society, and to see that taken away to such an archaic ideology is heartbreaking. It's fucking heartbreaking, and I think I wonder if the Taliban now will have to contest in a different Afghanistan, 20 years worth of Afghan people that, while they're afraid now, okay, they're rolling into town, and these are the extremists of the country. These are the people that will fight for their regions and are battle hardened, you know, in some ways brainwashed fucking people that are willing to fucking die for an ideology. So maybe they're letting whoever let the dust settle, and then we will see over the coming months who's gonna take hold and what's gonna happen. I mean, I said they come in peacefully, but it's relative peace, because right now you're seeing things change drastically, and more things are being uncovered about this.
It's changing.
Not invasion, but this coup. Yeah.
So I suppose that begs the question, you know, you've got to sort of sit and watch and see what unfolds. But as far as in regards to the refugees, we've got a history of how we treat refugees in this country, and so does America. How do you see that situation unfolding, in your opinion?
Well, in terms of refugees, like Afghanistan's always had refugees, like we're talking about throughout the years. Millions of people are displaced because of the decade after decade of war. So again, this is what happens. We know what happens. One side will come in and ideology will take over, and will cause an influx of refugees. I think we owe it to the Afghan people who protected us when our soldiers were over there. The people who gave us information and gave us surveillance and interpreters that helped us understand where we were, and what country we were in, like our eyes and ears on the ground, and the aid workers there, and the people, and not even just them, the people who align with us, our ideology, and not just our ideology, but the ideology of the enlightened, and Afghanis that want to have those progressive things, the women that want to go to school, and they want to go to university, and men as well that don't want to live in a country that if you're caught robbing something when you're young and you're poor, they chop off your fucking hand. Look, yeah, a big thing's going to happen. You've got the Taliban right now are going to come in, and they've told Sharia laws there. Taliban and women's rights said, we assure people all over the world, especially the people of Afghanistan, Islam is giving rights to everyone equally. Women have their own rights, of which Islam has given rights to women. We will give them that much. So take from that what you want. And also some people have said, okay, yeah, well, we're going to continue with education of women, but then we're hearing reports of some leaders that have said, yeah, well, okay, of course we can educate the women, but past puberty, they can't be in the same colleges and educational buildings as the men. So again, we're going to have to build new schools now for women's schools. So of course they're not ready yet. And then you've other people that says, no, women past a certain age will have religious education, and I can't bear to understand the little girl that was born in 2002, say, and she's grown up and gone to school, and maybe she's doing real well in university. I think it was in one of the top Afghanistani schools was like 51% or 60% women, and such a they've known through high school and university is, okay, I've got a shot here. It's just heartbreaking, and again, what are we to do? Is because here's another thing, and because I'm a proponent to lead, of course, and I think we can use our power to accept those people, refugees. I think we don't have to trust and love the Taliban. I think we can join the international community by enacting sanctions and bringing war crimes to light and taking the people in. And I'm not an anti-interventionist either. I'm just anti-occupation, but also at very early days, you have the Prime Minister has taken part of the country or is in a non-Taliban stronghold, an anti-Taliban stronghold, and he's now claimed to be the Prime Minister. You have the actual the Vice President, and you have the actual President saying, I only left so there was no bloodshed in Kabul. I'm still... So you have a lot of different factions here, and then you've also got the ANA, like, are they hiding, or are these people just deciding they're going to stand up past a certain time? I'm hoping Biden doesn't go back in, but I don't know what I hope for.
There's been reports already of revolutions within just Kabul that have been put down by the Taliban, but we will have another break, and when we come back, we're going to just delve a bit more on our thoughts on where we see this happening, and we'll be right back. If you've had enough of hearing us talk shit, calm your nerves. Take a walk with Johnny. Welcome back again, guys. First time we've had 2 breaks, man. Only episode 2. Looking promising at the moment. Hopefully.
They went over double the time, which is funny, because America was double the time that Russia was in Afghanistan. There's a little fireside fact for all you fireside yarnies over there. The dirty dozen. Twisted firesiders. So where were we? The withdrawal. I mean, I thought we'd for this last bit we'd talk about what's the interest in leaving, what's the interest in staying, the soldier's perspective. We wanted to touch on that a little bit as well, the future a little bit, Vietnam comparisons. But yeah, and then we'll try and wrap it up a little bit with, because again, it's not wrapped up. This is not an ending thing. This is we're going to have a couple of episodes as more information comes out and there's more to talk about. But what do you want to do? Do you want to talk about the interest in leaving first or the interest in staying? You know,
I'm interested in your take on staying. What do you see?
My take on staying, it's not. Look, see, I want to go. So if I'm to look at who would want to stay, you would have like Afghanistan has natural resources. They have trillions of dollars of mineral wealth and the majority of the world's opium and heroin. So there's that. There's the geographical advantage and military bases in that region. I mean, we have.
But are we using those people? Are we using those people for our own benefit?
Yeah. That's what I believe. Like, so the interest in staying for the interest of the people is different. Like, what are the interests in staying can be, why do we want to be there? But if we want to help the people there, like there is a viewpoint where people think we have to go back in there and we have to try and prop up the ANA again so that Afghanistan can continue being the type of country that we want it to be, and that what a lot of Afghanis want it to be too. But I don't know. What do you think about the interest of staying in the interest of Afghanistani people? Did we hang them out to dry?
For human rights, I see we have to remain there in some way until this is cleared up, and I don't see it being cleared up anytime soon. But as I mentioned before, you know, I'm against extremism, and the Taliban in there with their extremist beliefs and their oppressive laws that they're implementing. I think we need to be there, maybe not as a military force, but we definitely need to be in negotiation and you know, assist in a smooth transition, I suppose.
Yeah, look, we have to talk to whoever's in charge of Afghanistan, because ultimately we want the people there to do well, regardless of what decisions they make. Like, it's a hard one, because why Afghanistan? Why don't we do this to the poor people in North Korea? Why aren't we telling our allies Saudi Arabia to leave the people in Yemen alone? Why Afghanistan? You know, like, there's many despots around the world. There's many human rights atrocities around the world, and we don't just fucking invade them. So I feel like
we've already been involved there. We've had a part in the, you know, the lead up to this in regards to being there, and I think it's only fair that we see it through. Like I said, I don't believe we need to be there as a military force. Our attempt at that has come and gone, and you know, this withdrawal has shown that to a degree it's failed.
Well, we militarily we have military victories, so we've won battles, and of course the Taliban is months boom. They can be gone if we want to be going there, and they'd be gone. But it's what's long lasting. How do we hand it over to the Afghan people in a way that, because this is what it feels like. It feels like we want to hand it over in a way that makes us feel good about the way their country's going. But ultimately, these people do have to, just like we let other countries sort themselves out, I think we have to be careful. I think if we are going to be involved, there has to be in some sort of way, like, we will accept it, just like we do, like America does with Cuba. They'll accept any person from Cuba as blanket amnesty. You come over and they will get a path to citizenship. I think we need to be open arms aspect. We need to respect Afghanistan's home rule. We don't have to respect the way they rule. We don't have to respect their human rights atrocities.
We can be there as a reason.
But we're not there. It's not us. If we're becoming more, if we were to go in there as a, not in there, but if we were to talk with them and use our power diplomatically, I think it could be a lot better. I mean, but we've got a lot. You're going to have a lot of people that are going to be wanting to force Biden to go back in there. And again, you've got defense contractors, the military industrial complex, lobbyists and regional allies. They're going to be so many people that want America to go back in there. And I'm so surprised that he has held the course, because no one has been able to cut ties because of how advantageous it is. Now, of course, you're losing. We'll get into the reasons for leaving, but that's because it's very costly. But again, the 2.26 trillion number of what we spent could also be a reason to stay. Because like the soldiers will say, what a waste. Like, how can we spend so much and leave?
Someone's always going to make money off war. Like, that's no secret. And now with defense contractors, obviously, that's how they're going to make their money. You know, that's their business, is going in and fighting wars and conflicts and stuff like that. So obviously there is that pressure. I just don't see an advantage of us going back in an armoured force perspective. You know, because it's going to end up inevitably the same way. You can force the Taliban in, another 20 years goes by, at the end of that, they just turn around and walk back in.
You can stay there, and make them live the way we want to live, and then one day if we ever decide to leave, this will happen again, or we can take a different approach and just be there for. But again,
it's like the old saying, though, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink. So obviously this has ended up the way it has because there hasn't been enough influence, I suppose, maybe, this is for lack of a better word, in getting the people to see or to convert over to that Western sort of
the Enlightenment. Like, we don't have to claim it as ours, but
no,
progress and human rights they're not uniquely Western. Like, but I know what you're saying, and that's the battle, isn't it? And that's the problem with this subject, is there's so many different points of view. I mean, and those, when we're talking about people who may have not malicious reasons for going in there, but economic reasons for wanting to stay in, and they might be safety reasons, security reasons for people of Israel and Saudi Arabia and all of our geopolitical partners in that region might really like having the US Army around there. They might really like having the weight of that force there. I mean, you're seeing that what can happen when they're there, 20 years of occupation, and when they leave, it just, you know, people act very differently. So
yeah,
we'll have to see how it goes. I mean, this is a country of 40 million people. And for example, we're nearly 26 million. So it's huge. It's one of the fastest growing countries in the world since the 60s. And they've shared borders, like you were saying, with Iran, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, China, and Pakistan. Like, it's such a vital part of the world, and it's just so sad to see it fall in such disrespect into, or to be stuck, I should say, in such a medieval, archaic way. And we tried, you know, like, we tried nation building, and that was the mission creep that went from destroying the Taliban and Al Qaeda's ability to attack us and taking out Osama bin Laden, to all of a sudden now it's like, no, we're going to stay and we're going to build this nation in the way that we like, because that's what we've done with Germany and Japan. They were brutal enemies, and we've ended up building them up to these countries that are our best allies and our friends. So we're trying to do the same thing, but I think the history that we talked about earlier of the Afghan people they're one of just been like, just leave us the fuck alone. And they will do whatever is necessary for that to happen. And if whatever is necessary is to see the only people in your country that have had these types of victories, to join them. And unfortunately, it is those barbaric institutions that stood up, or that were able to stood up at the time, or that were bolstered by the West or whatever proxy. So I guess let's talk about reasons for leaving. And I hit that that number, that 2.2 trillion so far that we've invested in the country, and that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money for a country. Like, for us, it's a lot of money in different ways. But for America, that's a lot of money to be spending on the social welfare of another country. And I'm a proponent of social welfare. But when you're a country that doesn't have paid parental leave, when you're a country that doesn't have a private healthcare system worth a damn, and you know what I mean, and you don't have guaranteed. Yeah, you don't have workers' rights to the same thing. It's like, and people in Flint, Michigan, don't have drinkable water. So hopefully, Boyd's infrastructure plan will at least curb some of that. But the majority of people want to.
Definitely,
yeah, we want to invest. Yeah,
the amount of issues that America is facing itself. It's time to maybe look inward for them. For us, I just see that we've been there long enough, and the fact that the Taliban have moved in as quickly as they have, it's been inevitable. And there is other ways that we can assist without having a military presence there. As I said before, I would like to get the perspective on our returned servicemen and women in that regard, because they are the ones.
You have a little bit. Like,
well, they're the ones though that have lost friends, like direct friends, and have been there and have seen things that you and I haven't seen. And you know, I can understand them not wanting to talk about something like that, absolutely. But
they're out talking.
Like you mentioned before, in regards to our own issue at the moment, as we've always had, but it seems to be in the media a lot more now with our own suicide rates with return personnel. I think it's time that we brought our people back and we focused on that and build a system where there is more support there, you know, and I don't think there is that support. It's all good and well to wave a flag and go for a march on Anzac Day. But you know, it shouldn't end there. And I certainly don't want to get to the degree of America where they idolize war to the degree that they do. But I think there definitely needs to be more support systems there for our returned servicemen and women. And we are seeing the repercussions of that massively. I know I have been exposed to it a lot more with working with, you know, the few returned servicemen. One of them, you know, has a lot of friends that are close to them in regards to, you know, because there isn't that support there. There probably should be. So I think as a nation, we need to withdraw so that we can focus and really build that, and we can help in Afghanistan in other ways.
Yeah, like you touched on it earlier about knowing people in the military here in Australia, and you know, this is the reason why I'm in Australia. You know what I mean? I moved to a little town in the Hunter Valley, and I'm from a military family, and an Australian military family, and that's why we are in that town. So of course there was the mines, there's the wines, and then there's the army. You know, but what I love about Australia is we're not so much. When we say lest we forget, we don't say lest we forget that war we won, lest we forget how good we are at war. Of course, we talk about ingenuity and the bravery of the Anzacs, but we remember the Anzacs, and we remember the sacrifice they put their hand up. So whatever, like we were saying earlier, whatever you say about what a nation decides to do with its army, you have to be there for the army. They're the people that do the competent people, the brave people that do that. And we can't paint them with the same brush as we do as the countries that decide to go in here. Now, from what I've heard, because I've been watching some Australian soldiers and American soldiers talk about we'll go back to Anzacs for a second. We remember Gallipoli, which was a bungle itself. We weren't supposed to land at Suvla Bay, when the going gets tough, we remember that the horrible things these people had to endure to win or to get to that hill, you know. So it is, from what I'm hearing from returned servicemen who went to 2001 to 2021 war in Afghanistan, is what a waste. Like, they went there when they joined this war, because it's 20 years, you full adults being born, joining the army, going to war, and they believe that they're joined to be part of building a better Afghanistan. They believe that they're fighting terror, they're fighting Al Qaeda, and these people that these suicide bombers that are killing us. And for a lot of reasons they are. Like, there are stories over there of people that, like, I heard an American soldier, Tim Kennedy, talking about how he took out, there was a fella in the region that was throwing battery acid at little girls, like, on her, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's disgusting.
Mm.
And he took pride in the fact that we got him. We remember, because a lot of these people, they're fighting to send little girls to school. They're fighting so people can open their shop and just run a business. They're fighting veterans developing institutions like schools and hospitals and pharmaceuticals, and a lot of them now and you're hearing it, and they're getting calls from their Afghan National Army allies, and they're getting calls from interpreters and again, people that were working with surveillance for them and protecting them. Like, there's people over there that gave valuable information to Aussie soldiers to make sure that they didn't get hurt. Now, we lost 41 people, and that's 41 Australians I would have preferred not lose, you know. But the reason why it's as low as it is, and I don't want to call it low, but the reason why it is not more, is because that there was people that in these villages and in these regions that helped us, and I do think we owe it to them to say, look, safe passage here to Australia. Because if you help a digger, you help one of our guys get out of there, like, I think that's pretty fucking Australian. And another thing, 18th of August just happened those 2 days ago, and that's Vietnam Veterans Day, you know, and that was the Wednesday just gone, and it used to be called Long Tan Day. There was a famous battle of the Men of D Company and the 6th Battalion of the Royal Australian fucking Defence Force. And I think we have to be there for the people that not only want a better lives for themselves and maybe are more inclined to get away from the Taliban, and maybe they want in Afghanistan. That's not the way it is, but for the moment they have to just get out of there. The way they treat women and vulnerable members of society, like homosexuals and atheists. I mean,
and I suppose I'll take that off,
live.
like you've mentioned, you know, that the way that they are treated over there, and you know, we owe them that. One thing that has concerned me over this last week, in regards to this Afghanistan being back in the media, is some of the responses from the general public, from here, from America, people that haven't been over there like us, but also haven't put some time in to understand the situation and have taken on that very racial perspective and that very ignorant perspective of what's going on. What I will say to those sorts of people is have a look at how well you have it in your country and how lucky you are and privileged you are to live in the country that you do, with the laws and the freedom that we have. And then take on board everything that we have spoken about tonight. Even if you don't believe it, have a think about the whole history and the continuation of wars and oppression and the external influences that these people have been constantly hammered with. And then reevaluate your view of them, because you're only looking at it from one side of perspective, or a very ignorant, maybe racist view of people that you do not know anything about. And at the end of the day, they are human beings. Yes, the Taliban and those sort of forces have done horrendous things and have acted in ways that we do not condone at all, as have Western nations in the past committed those sorts of crimes that we nowadays do not condone. But nothing gives you the right to sit here on your couch and judge these people that have done nothing wrong except try and survive and live their lives. And nothing gives you the right to make comment in regards to people fleeing in fear. Now, we have never experienced in our lifetime, and we probably won't experience in our lifetime, hopefully, the level of fear and anguish and anxiety that these people are feeling at the moment. And if you want to make judgment about people running for their lives, about climbing on planes in a desperate attempt to escape a country and a regime that they genuinely fear, you need to go and look in the mirror and reevaluate not only your values, but whether you, in that situation, would do the same or turn around and pick up a gun like a lot of people are saying they were doing. And it's very easy to say that on the couch. I know myself, if in that situation I was told to go and, or I had the choice to go and pick up a gun and fight, 20 people on my own, like, be real. This isn't an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. This isn't Hollywood. Have a good think before you make comment and before you make judgment, because that's not who we are as Australian people. That's not who we want to be. And these people just want what we want, and that is to be alive and free and be able to do the things that we want and do. So on that, we'll probably bring it to an end for this episode tonight. Yeah. It's a long one. There's going to be a lot more talk as this unfolds even more. And I know we've both got probably a lot more to say in regards to this whole issue, but we are limited to the time frames that we have.
This is not a full-time job.
No.
Firesiders, unless you want to make it a full-time job for your old yarners over here. But we have no monetization set up at the moment, obviously. We're doing this for fun. So again, get down in the comments, tell us what you want to talk about more. Again, we're going to be hitting on more of this stuff. We've got China and Russia and other influences in the area are going to come in now, and everyone's going to be vying for this bit of land, that for the influence on this bit of land, like we always have. And like Vinno was saying, asylum seekers, refugees, like what Australian, wouldn't do to make sure their daughter and their son and their wife can get safe passage somewhere and live a normal life. And when you have these, remember, refugees of these countries, they're not Taliban, they're not Al Qaeda, they're the people running from them. They're the people that share some of our enlightened perspectives, and the people that just want to live a normal life. And I want, as Aussies, and I want us all to truly figure out what do we want to do here. We want to make sure that, are we the good guys? Are we good faith? Let's put our money where our mouth is. Let's take responsibility and say we went in there and we got the bad guy. We met some of our brief, and now there are our allies over there, and they will join us. Let them over. And on that note, Fireside episode 2. This will continue. There'll be part 2 of Afghanistan. There'll be a domino effect in the region. It seems like we're not hard off for some political and geopolitical dramas right now. We're in an era of COVID and pandemics. There's a lot to talk about there.
Absolutely. Well, we were actually going to do a light-hearted episode tonight, but with how
This was going to be favourite bands, wasn't it?
it's turned.
Your favourite band, Vinno?
Hey, we'll still do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
Look, guys, hope you've enjoyed it. Like we've said, get in the comments. If tell us we're wrong. Let's have that chat. This is what this platform is for. Let's have a talk. Let's discuss these sorts of things. We want to hear your ideas and your opinions on it. Get around the fireside, talk to us. Let's have that chat. Dave, awesome to do episode 2, mate. Next week, we still don't know what we're going to do next week.
What are we going to do? Hell, well, we didn't even know what we were going to do now. Like,
let's
tune
not
in, and you motherfuckers better like that shit. And you better fucking make a comment. There's only one comment, and it's me.
Yeah.
So get in there and fucking say some shit and challenge us. Don't even challenge us. Let us know as well. You can challenge us, but let us know what you liked as well, because people want to know how to bring this and how to grow this channel and this series of episodes. What do you want from us? And I hope we're hitting every perspective, and we're trying to understand. And we're not, obviously everyone's got their politics, but we're trying to bridge that gap. So if you have a fire and you're a responsible fire, this is beautiful. Get around it with your family or whoever's just in your house, just the people in your home. You know what? Have a virtual fireside and join us next week for episode 3 when we talk about God knows what. Vinno, thanks for having me again, mate.
Dave, always a pleasure, man. Talk to you later on. See you guys.